Good afternoon, everybody. The witching hour has arrived. It's 4 o'clock. We must get cracking on this. It's great to see a lovely crowd up here in Kent, and it's wonderful to see our friends, Director of Research Training for the school, Dr. Mark Chong, and the head of the archaeoanthropology discipline. Get himself right there. Dr. Rosita Henry is down there. We have a research student monitor, Pauline here. We have some supervisors. We even have a student. So I really think that we're all ready to go. We've got all the necessary bodies on board. Cassia is here to give us a confirmation seminar, PhD confirmation seminar, and her topic is a reference grammar of Wojtylak Murui, a topic about which I really can say that I know absolutely nothing. Cassia, when you're ready, tell us about your plans. And when we're through, we will have a few questions and so on and so forth. And then, when those questions are through and we've clapped Cassia till our hands are raw, everyone not directly in the little committee, those say the supervisors, Pauline and myself, and Mark and Rosita down south, would everyone please evacuate the room at top speed, because we then form a little secret committee to decide poor Cassia's fate. Okay, don't worry, Cassia, it'll be all right. Thanks everybody, and Cassia, when you're ready, off you go.
Well, good afternoon everybody, here in Clarence as well as in Townsville. Thank you very much for coming. During today's talk, I will present my PhD research project that focuses on language documentation and involves a complete description of a South American endangered language called Murui. The title of this PhD project, as you can see on the slide, is a reference grammar of Murui. The presentation will cover the following topics. I will start with the introduction, where I will briefly talk about endangered languages. Then I will introduce the Murui language and show its linguistic features. Following this, I will focus on the research objectives of this project. Then the scientific as well as the social significance of the project will be discussed. And I will continue by outlining previous research done in the past years on the Witoto languages as well as the Murui language. Research methodology will be the following topic. Then I will discuss the work program, its time frame, deliveries of this project as well. Finally, I will present the estimated budget and the available funding. After the presentation, there will be time to answer any questions that you might have. Before describing the project in more detail, I think we should talk a little bit about language endangerment and language documentation. I have posted here a number of questions concerning endangered languages. So, starting with the first one, endangered languages, what's the fuss? Well, there's currently about 4,000 languages spoken on Earth. More than half of these languages have no written form and are vulnerable to loss and being forgotten. When languages disappear, they leave behind no dictionary, no text, no record of the accumulated knowledge and the history of the people. Linguists estimate that 3/4 of the languages spoken today will become extinct in the next century. So, what do we know about South American indigenous languages? Well, the indigenous languages of South America are thought to have developed for more than 10,000 years in complete isolation from the rest of the world. These indigenous languages belong to many distinct language families and consist of many language isolates and yet unclassified languages. They have impressive structural complexities, and these complexities are crucial to the evolution of linguistic theories that will enrich our knowledge about languages in general. Many of the languages once spoken in South America are extinct today as the result of the social discrimination of the ethno-linguistic groups in South America. A great number of indigenous languages are considered to be endangered. So why do those languages die out? Well, nowadays the reason for language death are mainly assigned to the processes of globalization and urbanization. Language death most commonly involves bilingual speakers shifting from using two languages to using only the socially dominant one. This often happens when the dominant language, such as Spanish or Portuguese in South America, is considered to be more prestigious than the minority language. So what difference does it make when a language dies out? Well, every language reflects a unique worldview with its own value system, its own history, philosophy, and culture. The extinction of a language results in an irreplaceable loss of unique cultural knowledge that has been there for centuries. This historical and spiritual knowledge is nowadays considered to be essential for the survival of the speakers in South America. So the last question, what can we do to save these languages? Well, the most important thing that can be done to keep a language from disappearing is to create suitable conditions to speak the language, for the speakers to speak the language, and for the speakers to teach it to their children. Well, this often requires national policies that recognize and protect minority languages. It also requires educational systems that promote mother tongue instruction. And it also requires collaboration between community members and the linguists to develop, for example, writing system and to introduce a formal instruction in the language. In order to achieve this, language documentation is crucial. Language documentation entails producing descriptive grammars, collecting text, such as songs and stories, and creating dictionaries of the language. This is done so those materials can be accessed by the future generation of the speakers and by the researchers as well. Before we move further, I would like to introduce you to somebody. Well, this is Mrs. Lucinda Ribeirinho, my Witoto Murui mother and opossum Jimenake. Jimenake sadly passed on in 2010, and I would like to tell you why. This is a story that started my linguistic career and a story that I will remember for many years from now. In 2010, I was set up to go for my first linguistic fieldwork in a Witoto village of the Kilometro Once in Colombia. I arrived there to stay with my Witoto Murui, the Witoto Murui people for the next 3 months. Until then, I had never been in a similar situation before, so you can imagine that was quite exciting to me. The family of Mrs. Lucinda was the one that would take care of me during my stay in the village. When I entered the house for the very first time, what I saw on the ground was a little possum. So the next thing that I know is me sitting on the ground with the possum, cuddling with it. Well, Mrs. Lucinda laughed and told me in Spanish that this little animal in Witoto Murui is called Jimenake. The word Jimenake would become the very first word that I would learn from those people during my fieldwork. Well, before coming to the village, I studied a little bit available grammatical descriptions of the language, so I knew a little bit how the language is structured. Well, I knew, for example, how to say possession forms. I knew how to say mine, yours, his, hers. So I wanted to try my very first Witoto phrase, so I would repeatedly say kue Jimenake, which in Witoto Murui means my possum. Well, an hour later I had to part with my Jimenake because some members of Lucinda's family wanted to show me the village. When I came back to the house, I kept looking for my Jimenake, but I could not find it. Well, I asked my Witoto mother whether she knows what happened to my Jimenake. Well, she brought me to a fire stove and she showed me a boiling pan with something floating on the surface. Well, I didn't know it didn't take me too long to realize what it actually was. So I looked at Lucinda and I didn't know how to react. I asked in Spanish, ¿por qué? Why? Well, Mrs. Lucinda looked at me and answered in Spanish. You said kue Jimenake, you said my possum. People say this when they are hungry, she said. People say, Lucinda said, my Jimenake, my tapir, my monkey. If not hungry, why to say my possum? Well, if you wonder how this story finished, well, I had to eat my Jimenake. And throughout my entire fieldwork, I will be really cautious when I use the possession forms, especially the word kue. Well, before we move further, I wanted to show you how the Witoto language sounds like, and we will listen to a part of a traditional song that Mrs. Lucinda taught me once. These types of songs are sung during various festivities in the village.
Usuma hukana bite komohu tangohu nagu yakade. Usuma hukana bite tangohu nagu yakade. Usuma bija, eima bija. Usuma bija, eima bija, usuma bija, eima bija.
Well, let us now have a closer look at the language that Mrs. Lucinda speaks, the Witoto Murui. Witoto Murui is spoken by about 6,800 people in Colombia and 1,000 in Peru. The language belongs to a smaller language family in South America called Bora Witoto. In this slide we can see the classification of the languages that belong to this language family. We can see that the Bora Witoto language family consists of two linguistic sub-branches, which is Bora and Witoto. Bora sub-branch consists of two languages, Bora with its dialect Miranian and the Muinane language. The Witoto sub-branch consists of Nunuya language, Early Witoto and Okaina. Early Witoto is a macro term that covers 4 languages, Mika, Menika, Murui and Nepoda. In this presentation I will refer to the Murui language as Witoto Murui. Other languages that fall under the Early Witoto branch, so Mika, Menika and Nepoda, will be lumped together under one term, the Witoto languages. The Witoto village of La Chorrera is the place where the linguistic data for this project will be collected. La Chorrera is the capital of the Witoto people. The following map presents the location of the Witoto people and the neighboring languages. The Witoto languages are marked with a purple color on the map. The village of La Chorrera is located in the Colombian department of Amazonas. On the map, it has been marked with a yellow cross. The village consists of approximately 3,000 people. It is located in a fairly accessible area in the Amazon basin at the banks of Igaparaná River, and the village is reachable either by air or by boat. Last month I contacted Fundación Caminos de Identidad, so-called FUCAI in Colombia. FUCAI is one of the biggest governmental agencies in Colombia that protects Indians and their interests, and the culture of course. FUCAI assured me that the area of La Chorrera is secure and I will encounter no problems there. Moreover, an anthropologist from La Universidad Nacional in Bogotá, Juan Álvaro Echeverri, with whom I worked during my fieldwork in 2010 in Colombia, is helping me as well. He lived in La Chorrera for years and he knows the people. He contacted the Witoto leaders about my arrival and he said that people are very happy to receive this move. Now let me present you a number of characteristics of the Witoto languages, so you would, or at least Witoto Murui, to have an idea how the language looks like. Well, Witoto Murui language is agglutinative and is generally head marking. This is shown in example 1 and 2. Example 1, I want to finish. And example 2, I do not want to come to sleep, approach to sleep. The word order is AOV, SVOV. The example 3 shows that Witoto Murui is verb final indeed. Kai hofomo hydromen, which the last word is the verb. Witoto Murui has a number of ways to express predicate. The most common constructions are the ones presented in example 4 and 5. As you can see, the constructions of the predicate differentiate in the use of the infix de and ga in 4 and 5. Example 4, Uruena keodikwe and Hifisaina begakwe, example 5. Well, in addition to those two examples in 4 and 5, there is also another construction to represent predicate in Witoto. It is marked by the suffix ja. You can see it in example 6. Ie anamo gidone fuija. At the end, the gidone clan terminated. Well, all these 3 sentences are examples of misconceptions in the literature when it comes to the Witoto Murui language. Well, the current analysis tell us that the sentence 4 and 5 are the active and the passive voice constructions in the language. These analyses try to underpin the Witoto Murui language according to the traditional analysis of Indo-European languages. Well, all those 4 and 5, the sentence 4 and 5, do have an active and a passive aspect. They are merely different constructions to represent the predicate of Witoto Murui. The same for the example in 6. The construction with the suffix ja has been referred in the Witoto literature as infinitive, while it is simply an example of the verbal nominalization. Wojtylak Murui has a rich system of classifiers. It is uncertain how many classifiers Wojtylak Murui has. The number of these classifiers vary in the literature from 50 up to a few hundred. The Wojtylak classifiers, by means of suffixes, can denote, among others, the form, size, shape, texture, and mass. See the example 7 through 10. The example wo and 7 denotes shape of a small hole. This is represented by Ivo, the nose, and Dobo, the hole. In example 8, we have the classifier rai, which denotes the form of a trunk. Hiforai and hifirai, a type of a tree trunk or a trunk of an ahit. The example ri denotes medium size of an object. Huiji diri, a ball juka, and hobai diri, a ball. There are also classifiers that can be combined to derive new meanings. This is represented by classifiers in the example 10. The classifier do denotes shape curved, and the classifiers gai meaning shape bent. So it gives us ogodogai, banana curved, and shape meaning crooked banana. There is also another example presented here, ogodose, in which the classifier do represents the shape curved, and the classifier se represents the mass, which gives us many bananas in that reading. Well, Wojtylak Murui has also a small class of adjectives that within NP precede nouns. Adjectives belong to a close class of words that can denominate either dimension, such as tall and big, age, such as new and old, and value, such as good. There is some grammatical marking, agreement marking, that we can see in example 11. Baie mare raike, this good fire. Another feature of Wojtylak Murui is presented in example 12, which means 2 men walked with the son of my nephew. Well, according to the literature, diga is a postposition, but however, at this stage of my research, I rather see it as a commutative enclitic with. Well, this PhD project has several objectives. The most important one is to create a detailed reference grammar of Wojtylak Murui language that integrates existing research and focuses mainly on the linguistic analysis of the data collected in the field. Such a thorough description of Wojtylak Murui is absolutely necessary in order to be able to understand the interaction between phonology, morphology, and the syntax of the language. Moreover, the research will help to reanalyze and revise the already established linguistic structures in the language, such as we've seen as in the active and the passive voice constructions before. The reference grammar will also form a foundation for the future research on the structures of the related Witoto languages that will help to determine their linguistic affiliation more precisely. This is necessary because the current linguistic classification of the Bora Witoto languages is problematic and it is uncertain. The situation is caused by the fact that some Witoto languages are already extinct, and that is why it is difficult to determine of how many languages Bora language family consisted of in the past. Well, let's talk a little bit about the scientific significance of this project. From the point of view of theoretical linguistics, the discovery of new linguistic patterns is crucial for the development of linguistic theories. Therefore, studying languages that do not belong to the well-studied Indo-European linguistic family is of a great importance. It is beyond doubt that Wojtylak Murui has impressive structural complexity. By providing a full account of the existing structures in the language, this research will therefore contribute to the development and the enrichment of the current theories in linguistics. When talking about scientific significance, I think we also should mention that studying undocumented languages such as Wojtylak Murui is not only of a great importance for linguistics, but also for other disciplines, such as anthropology, archaeology, history, ethnography, cognitive science, and for example, musicology. Well, except for the scientific significance, the study has also a social significance. All the languages are interlinked with the culture of their speakers, and all languages represent a specific expression of human thought and social organization. If Witoto Murui become extinct, priceless intellectual knowledge of the world of the people will be permanently lost. This research will therefore ensure the preservation of the knowledge and the experience of the Witoto Murui people. This research is not mainly designed to focus on the pure grammatical description that the majority of the Witoto people will not directly benefit from, but it will also help the communities in the community in various other ways. A well-written grammar will reinforce group identity, will allow the development of didactic materials such as school books, for example, and it will promote new language policies for the Witoto Murui language. By doing this, the Witoto Murui language will gain prestige and a high status that will make the Witoto Murui people proud of their language. This is important because the social-linguistic situation of the Witoto Murui people is characterized by highly progressing shift towards Spanish. The rate of assimilation has become dramatically alarming. For example, all the speakers of Witoto Murui in Peru are already bilingual, and in Colombia there is only a few elders that are still monolinguals. While Spanish is obviously considered to be a more prestigious language among the Witotos. It dominates all the domains of the language use, both formal and informal. And although the Witoto language is recognized by both the Colombian and the Peruvian government for use in school, in reality it is Spanish that is frequently preferred in educational context. If Witoto Murui language is left aside and continues to be thought to be less prestigious, Spanish will soon take over all the domains of the use of the Witoto language. Well, let us now talk briefly about the previous research done on the Witoto languages. We see on the slide that there is only a small number of studies done so far on Mika, Menika, and the Nipone language. Almost all of those studies are very small in size. They consist mainly of 5 up to 10 pages, and they are very limited in their analysis. Well, if you have any questions concerning those studies, we can talk about it after the presentation. We see a very similar situation regarding the research on the Witoto Murui language. There is only a few very limited studies on the language. The only fairly extensive work on the verbal morphology is presented in my MA thesis based on the data collected during my fieldwork in 2010. The only existing dictionary among the Witoto languages is the Witoto Murui dictionary written by a missionary, Shirley Birch, in 1983. Here is an example, as you can see, of the page from that dictionary. With regards to the research methodology, the proposed project requires a qualitative and an analytic approach that rely initially on the study of the existing literature of the Witoto languages, and subsequently the analysis of the data collected during my 3 field trips to the Witoto Murui community in La Chorrera. The work will therefore proceed in 3 stages. First, literature, then fieldwork, which wants to say that in the initial stage of the research, I will focus on the summary of the existing hypothesis of the language. And this will serve as the departure point for the fieldwork with the native speakers in La Chorrera. Then there is fieldwork and data collection. Well, this involves data collection, as I said, during those 3 field trips. Following the language observation and language immersion models, analysis and hypotheses about the language will be created, evaluated, tested, and developed. The data will be collected by recording spontaneous language productions that deal with the group's everyday activities, and only if necessary by conducting specific elicitations. The last stage, data analysis. Well, the data analysis will be done both in Cairns as well in La Chorrera, and it will be conducted within a cumulative typological framework called basic linguistic theory. Well, over the past years, many language descriptions and other linguistic publications have used this framework. Professor Dixon recently published 3 volumes outlining this theory. We are talking here about a theoretical framework that does not add to any formal theory. Because jargon from any specific formal theory is avoided, terms that are used are not controversial and clearly definable. This is to assure that the description will endure and it will be accessible for the future generations of the researchers. While formal theories in linguistics tend to change very often, and the basic linguistic theory provides a descriptive, objective, and flexible framework that is not prone to change. Formulating research questions will be done during the process of gathering data and analyzing it, of course. The programs used for the phonological and morphological analysis include, among others, Toolbox, Elan, and Praat. With regards to the work program, there is a division of work over 4 years of the duration of my PhD project. The submission, as you can see, of my thesis is planned for December 2016. The Human Research Ethics Committee has already officially approved of my application. And if you have any questions concerning the work program, we can talk about it after the presentation. Well, let us talk about the planned deliveries. Well, the main work will be, of course, a PhD dissertation titled A Reference Grammar of Murui. In addition to the PhD dissertation, a number of articles on Murui will be published as well. They will be published in referred journals such as Anthropological Linguistics and Journal de la Société des Américanistes. Moreover, the research outcomes will be presented during various international conferences such as Amazonifest. And to assure the cooperation with other linguists, the collected text and transcription material will be entered into the DOBES database of the Max Planck Institute. As for the Murui communities, among others, a number of storybooks and alphabetization workshop will be provided. It is also my plan to make a short ethnographic film about La Chorrera village and its people based on the collected visual materials. An estimated budget for this PhD project is 16,550 Australian dollars. The necessity of the materials is for the major part self-evident. They include travel expenses, vaccinations such as against hepatitis B, rabies, tetanus, diphtheria, and measles, and medications such as malaria pills. This project is entirely funded by the Australian Laureate Fellowship Project, the research grant of Professor Eichenwald. Well, finally, Mare Komene, as the Witoto people say. I would like to thank you to my advisors, Professor Eichenwald and Professor Dixon, all the committee members, and to everyone here in Cairns and in Townsville for your attention today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Cassia. That was beautifully timed. Questions and comments, folks? We might start in Cairns. Anyone got any questions or comments? I, for once, must say I'm lost for words because this is so. Not even I can think of anything to ask about this thing. Bob, sorry, Bob.
And that's saying a lot.
I can normally think of something, Mark.
I've never seen you lots of words.
Bob.
Well, I mean, I don't have any questions. It was just a comment. I mean, Cassia took advantage of the offer. It was actually myself to rehearse it with this, which not every student has ever done. But it was obviously most students to do that. So I asked questions during that, and she's, revisions. And also her budget didn't add up on the food bill that it does now. So there's one advantage of having that. So now I think it's absolutely, she's a first-class student, she's got a local background, she's a terrific project, and it's a real pleasure to have her.
Great. Yeah, no, it looks very promising. Pauline.
I did have just a question. Thank you for that, Sasha. It's wonderful. I'm just very interested, and this is my area of interest. You're talking about one of the outputs from this research will be pedagogical materials, but you're also talking about the context where the prestige of the language is in question. Do you think these pedagogical materials will be well received within the community, or do you think that's something that will need to be promoted as the status of the language is raised through your project?
Well, I remember when I was in the Murui village in Colombia, I remember people saying that they wanted to have materials in order for the children to learn the language. In the village where I was, I would say 95% of the young people would not speak the language. And the people would ask me whether it's possible just to create, because there is only one book when it comes to the didactic materials, which consists, I believe, of 40 pages. And I asked them whether it's possible just to create any kind of book so the children would be able to learn Witoto Murui at school. But it's mostly Spanish, well, it's basically Spanish that is taught there.
Perhaps I can add to this. I mean, all over the world, the dominant society tends to rubbish the local language and culture. But if a foreigner, like Cassia or all the other ones behind me, come into the community, it's a wonderful spirit. They think, this person's interested in me. We have this whole book for our language. And also, Cassia said they push on policies to teach language in schools. They don't do it. It's not their materials. They would like to put the policy into operation. The very presence there, the presence and prestige, material help to put that prestige in.
Cassie, sorry, are there, do the governments of these, the national governments or state governments of these countries encourage native language pedagogy? And if they do, are those that would you have to start from scratch? Is it possible, do you follow me, one could generate teaching materials in which, as it were, you could put a language, you know what I mean? Instead of starting from scratch for kids' books or school books, you could have books generically designed in which the language could then be, as it were, inserted. Is that sort of thing possible? Is that sort of thing?
Yes, I strongly believe so. Because, like, if you look at the situation in Colombia and Peru, you see that that both the constitutions of those countries stated that the Witoto Murui is the official language in the territories in which it is spoken. Yet none of the schools teaches the language because there is, as Professor Dixon said, no materials to do so. So I believe if you create didactic materials and if you show the people that their language is worth to be taught,
Yep.
they are definitely going to learn it, and they ask me to. So.
Sure. Very good. Rosita, Mark, any ideas from that end?
Just want to congratulate you on a really wonderful presentation, very well done. Are children at all are they speaking the language in the home at all or not?
Well, it also just depends on the location, because where I was during 2010, the city was quite close. Well, the community of the Witoto people was located quite close to the Leticia city, in which actually had a great influence on the community, because children would not learn the Witoto Murui at all. But in La Chorrera, there is a school, and the Witoto Murui people do speak the language, and the young generation does speak the language, although they tend to cease at some point once they realize that the Spanish language is more prestigious than their own. So they speak up to 3, 4, 5 years old, and then once they enter school, they cease to speak it.
Yeah. And is this the situation with the other languages, the other Witoto languages, or only the Murui?
Yes, the situation is quite similar. What you actually see, I was talking about those 4 languages, Meka, Meneka, Nipode, and Murui. Yeah. You see that the Murui language is the biggest, well, the most spoken language. And if the most spoken language does not have a grammar, you cannot expect, those smaller languages to be taught as well. So once you give a prestige, to a bigger language, those smaller languages and those speakers might follow as well.
Yeah. Would you see an effect in the sense of if the materials are only produced for one language, that this might have an effect on the smaller ones in the sense of unless there are also materials produced on the other languages, that Murui becomes the dominant one. You know what I mean? In the sense it's being reinforced as the dominant language, and the others get forgotten, even as an inadvertent effect.
Yeah.
Yes, I am quite sure of that, because like as I said before, none of those languages have a written grammar. So the pedagogical materials, there is only a few of them, and very, very concise ones. So if you create a reference grammar of the bigger language and the didactic materials of the bigger language, then the small languages, well, the Meka, Meneka, and Nipode will follow as well. And what you also see is that, structurally speaking, those languages are very similar. So with the reference grammar of the bigger language, it's quite easy or easier, to create reference grammars of the other languages. And it's also easier to create pedagogical materials based for those languages, based on those languages specifically.
Thank you.
Can I add just one little sort of bit? First, the scientific significance of studying with other languages, and especially the biggest one, and then to social significance. These languages are part and parcel of sort of Northwest Amazonia's linguistic area. So we will learn so much more about the just ethnic history of Amazonia through Kasia's work. And another thing is that in many early sources, especially with 1915, Tesman 1930, what transpires is that the Witoto peoples have been the most trodden under, like really the bottom of the pile. They were almost exterminated during the infamous Peruvian Amazon Company. There is a novel by Vargas Llosa about Roger Casement, who sort of saved them from them. They were the real kind of true sufferers more than others, because other Indians also considered them inferior to themselves, like the Bora, the Andoke, and whoever else. So this is also another piece of social significance of Kasia's work, because now they're on top.
Very good. What goes around comes around. Mark, have you got any thoughts?
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Kasia. I thought that was a very lucid, very comprehensive, very engaging presentation that you gave us. So, apart from that, I am so pleased that Professor Eichenwald selected you as a student, and hopefully, God willing, you'll be able to complete your thesis within the 4 years time. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Richard. Nothing else.
Okay, wonderful. Nice to hear Roger Casement popping up. He seems to pop up all over the world. Any other further? This is one of the swiftest on record. Another question here.
I just have a quick question, Kasia. Great presentation. Thank you. I'm wondering, with your participant observation, how much observation are you able to do with kind of the middle stratum, so the people from the teenagers who you said have stopped speaking the language? So are you mostly, as I found before in Sierra Leone, it was mostly, our participant observation was kind of a circle of elderly women, around the campfire at night. Is that kind of your situation, and speaking to the children, of course? Or are you able to hear more of teenage and young people?
Well, of course, it depends on the situation in La Chorrera. That will have to be seen while I'm there, but I am thinking that most of the observation that will be done will be among the women, because just given the social organization of the Witoto people, this will have to be done with the women, given the fact that I am a woman myself. So, but of course, the younger generation is quite easy to observe, since most of them live in with the women, and there is what I was also thinking, there is also a school there, as I mentioned, so that will be a very nice place as well. In La Chorrera, I will be staying with a Bora teacher, so he has a lot of children under his supervision. So I think there will be a really great link, in order to see how the young generation speaks the language and what is their attitude towards the language via that school, via the contact that I already have. And of course, that will be developed during the field work.
I think I wanted to stress one thing which may not be totally clear. For MA, Kasia went to a town near the city where the language was only spoken by the older people.
Yes.
She's now planning to go deeper into the jungle to a place where the language is much better spoken. And so you're anticipating the fact to be spoken quite across the age groups.
Yes, that will be also a big advantage, because as Professor Dixon said, during my master thesis I was able just to work only with the elderly people, since the language was not spoken anymore by the younger people. So right now in La Chorrera I will have a bigger scope and a bigger potential for the just to see how the language, what the social linguistic situation of the language is, and how it is spoken by all the various groups of the community.
So, Katarzyna, is this a general issue in linguistics research of this kind? That to what extent do you need to be master of idiom to describe grammar? You know what I mean? You don't need to find what everyone the idiomatic uses of language amongst teenagers or men or retirees or whatever it is. You don't need to know all this to get a grammar of a language.
No.
I'm sure it helps, no doubt, but it's not vital.
No, it is not vital, of course not. But I think that will be an excellent topic, for the future research, because you will be able just to see how Spanish influences the Witoto language and how it is spoken by the younger generation. And I am quite sure that those influences will be very much visible there. So once you have the knowledge of the Witoto language as spoken by the elder people, you will be able just to see those different, influences, those different structures that will appear, I'm quite sure, in the Witoto language spoken by the young generation.
Okay, good. Well, folks, last chance. In that case, I think we must thank Kasia for a really beautiful presentation and wish her every possible success.